it is my honor and my pleasure to welcome to the stage two of the brightest hearts and minds in the world. Deepak Chopra and his guest, Dr. Vandana Shiva.
I'll find another seat. Hi, good evening. How's everyone? Is the microphone working? No. Can you adjust it, please, someone? Hello, how's this? Better? Okay, so I had made notes. I left them at home, so I don't have my notes, which is just for the better. I have a very long bio of Dr. Vandana Shiva. If I read the whole thing, it will take the rest of this evening. By the way, Hala, that was amazing. Thank you for setting the tone. I'll just start with a short story and then we'll go ahead. So when I was about 5 years old, my mother, who was the best storyteller in the world, she would say that in the Indian pantheon of archetypes and goddesses, there are three very important goddesses. They are Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, Durga, the destroyer of ignorance, and then of course you have Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. And she said, as you grow up, please pay attention to Saraswati and Durga and ignore Lakshmi. And Lakshmi will get jealous and then she will chase you. So that became a theme in my life. I met Dr. Vandana Shiva, I don't think you may or may not remember, at the World Forum with Mr. Gorbachev in San Francisco during the years before the Soviet Union fell and collapsed. And I heard her for the first time, and first thought came to me, Saraswati. And the second thought came to me, Durga.
Lakshmi is still running away.
Lakshmi, who cares about Lakshmi? So she's the embodiment of, she's a spiritual warrior. She is fierce. Don't you mess with her. And she comes armed with wisdom and knowledge of the universe, literally. So, again, in the ancient Indian scriptures, there's a phrase that in every seed is the promise of thousands of forests, because that seed is the potential for the entire ecosystem, for the birds, the bees, the flora, the fauna, all the living sentient beings are potentially in every seed. And with that, I'm going to just ask Vandana, I'm not going to read her bio. Go look it up on the internet, watch her films with Prince Charles and all the accolades she's got all over the world from various governments. And also, because she's a fierce warrior, she has, of course, attracted a lot of militant enemies as well. But she's always on the side of victory and truth and evolution and goodness. So, Vandana, I'm not going to say much. This is your evening. I'd like you to share a little bit about how you grew up, your childhood, and how you came to be Saraswati and Durga at the same time.
First, thank you, Deepak, being here. Thank you, Paulette, for having us and for creating these spaces. Each time I come back after a few years' gap, the food gets better. And it's the first time I was saying to Deepak, it's the first time I've had a nimbu with turmeric.
Yes. Yeah. Good for the microbiome and inflammation, as we know.
So I grew up in the Himalaya, and I grew up in the forest, and I first saw a forest disappear in 73, I went to visit for a trek. I was leaving for Canada to do my PhD in the foundations of quantum theory. And that's something we share very much, the quantum universe.
Non-local.
Non-local, that was my thesis, hidden variables and non-locality in quantum theory. Because this idea of the mechanistic world was so fake, it just didn't explain anything, And how could we have reached a stage where we want to define everything as a machine? I go to schools and say, what's food? Fuel to run the machine, that's our body. That's what they're taught in schools. Food is fuel. So it doesn't matter what's the quality, it just has to be running the machine. And my big work has been really not allowing the seed to be defined as a machine, invented by my dear Monsanto, who is now Bayer. I committed myself to protect, basically to be a Durga for nature, on that day when I saw the forest and stream disappear. And then I became a volunteer for the Chipko movement, which is a seed of love, Here were the women in my region coming out to defend the forests and trees by saying, we are going to hug the trees. Chipko means to hug. And you'll have to kill us before you kill the trees. That's what allowed the Himalayan forests of my region to be protected. 10 years they worked. But I was also going off to Canada. So I used to come every vacation to volunteer for Chipko. And I learned my activism from those women who, in their very gentle way, were very fierce. And I did my PhD in non-locality and just kept responding to whatever was an invitation from the earth. I did a few jobs, worked at some institutions. But in 82, we stopped the mining in my valley. I was asked by the Ministry of Environment. There were no environmentalists those days. You do an article, you're the expert. You get appointed by the Ministry of Environment. And they were still building the institutions those days, in the 70s. Now we are in the age of dismantling. And when you feel worried, it's happening to you, don't worry, it's a global phenomenon. Human rights, environmental laws, love between people. And one more thing is, it's not just that humus is the basis of humility. Humus is the basis of humanity. We are human because we are of the soil. And over the years, I just allowed the seed to teach me, and the seed taught me abundance. So Lakshmi as seed is very much with me. And in fact, in Orissa, which is a very big center, we evolved 200,000 rice varieties in the area of Orissa and Chhattisgarh. And at Lakshmi Puja, they have a Lakshmi Puja, they worship a bowl of rice. That's who Lakshmi is. Not cash, not money. And I think now, with two huge problems, the first, the disease of GDP, just a few decades old. How could we decide that this number, which is a cooked up number to mobilize the resources for wars, is the number to judge how good our economies are? And then the new report from Oxfam of how the 1% every day are getting rich by $2.2 billion. I don't think that's Lakshmi. I think that level of violence, of economic growth at the cost of the earth, and then the levels of brutality in society is, to me, unacceptable. And so we have to work together for peace with the earth. We have to work for our common humanity. And I say just one work, wherever we are, to live on this earth as one humanity on one planet, eating different delicious foods, speaking different languages. And Persia, then, you need to go sing for President Trump. So he realizes Persia has something to give the rest of the world,
So Vandana, she's the original tree hugger, by the way. That's how the whole movement started in the world.
No, it didn't start with me. I just joined them as a volunteer.
Yeah, but it was small, really.
Yeah, I mean, making it known and doing the research.
And by the way, there's a lot of data now that if you hug a tree or you touch a tree, and I am touching a tree and you're touching me and somebody else is touching you, we're all connected to the earth. Negative ions come from the earth, neutralize the excess free radicals, and bring down the inflammation. And we've been measuring that, right now. So tree hugging has very beneficial effects. Also, and this is a question I want to ask you, is because one of my main interests these days is the 2 million to 20 million extra genes that are in our gut, called the microbiome, and we have only 25,000 human genes, by the way. So you got only 25,000 genes from your parents. That's what made your body. But you have about 2 million to 20 million, depending on where you live, bacterial genes that interact with the food that you eat. And what I was reading is 30% of the microbiome has disappeared from urban societies. If you go to the Amazon today and you take a teaspoon of soil from under the surface of the earth, it has more biodiversity than the entire rainforest on the surface of not just the Amazon, but all the rainforests. So that is the richness of life under the soil. By ruining this and causing inflammation in the body, we now know that 95% of chronic illness is related to inflammation in the body, sometimes low grade, that we don't even know it's there. Only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. So the work you're doing is very significant. But we were having a conversation upstairs, and you said now that the food industry is getting involved in messing with the microbiome.
So first they got involved with messing with the soil by pretending that fertility comes by blasting fossil fuels at 400 degrees temperature to fix nitrogen from the air. And the slogan in Hitler's Germany was, "Bread from air, we won't need soil in the future." Well, that synthetic fertilizer was actually made in the same factories that made explosives for the war. And after the wars, they just retooled those same factories to be nitrogen fertilizer factories.
Yeah, we're putting Agent Orange, which was used in the killing fields of Vietnam, in our food right now.
Yeah, and glyphosate, Roundup. We have a campaign called Roundup, really need to round up. So first, they destroy the soil, and look at the richness of the soil. In a gram of organic soil, you've got 30,000 protozoa, 50,000 algae, 4 lakh fungi, 1 teaspoon of living soil has 1 billion bacteria, beneficial. You kill it, you get the pathogenic. After that, they said, oh, no, seed, not good enough. We're going to genetically modify it. So first they made artificial manure, which was the synthetic fertilizer. Then they made anti-seed, because seed, as you said, bija, that from which life arises forever and ever and ever on its own. Doesn't need help from outside. A little wheat seed knows to become a wheat plant. And a rice seed knows how to become a rice plant. And this self-organized inner system is the intelligence of the universe.
The potential for the entire ecology is in that seed.
In that seed. And it's holding millennia of evolution and memory and millennia of the future. So the reason I save seeds and the reason I started Navdanya, the movement, which means 9 seeds, is because, here is one of our members, a seed saver. She's holding a millet. The reason millets are called millets is because one seed gives you 1 million seeds. What she's holding would have been one tiny little seed. 1 million seeds.
That's true abundance.
That's true abundance. That's true Lakshmi.
Yeah. And inexhaustible abundance.
And the prayer we have, Deepak, for when we sow is, may this seed be exhaustless. Now, Monsanto has spent all its time exhausting the seed. Whether it's by patent saying, no, you can't save seed. It's illegal to save seeds. You can't have your own seed. And now we'll even try terminator technology, which we managed to stop commercially. But that's the intention, to terminate life. And what we are finding, so we just saved seeds. And we grew biodiversity. And the more biodiversity we grew, we found we were producing more food and nutrition. And we said yield per acre of nutritionally empty toxic food is a total mismeasure. It's the ultimate Cartesian reduction to size and weight. What we need is measuring the health benefits of food, the nutrition in the food. So we measure nutrition per acre. We could feed 2 times the world's population by growing healthy food, which doesn't destroy the earth, which doesn't destroy the soil, which doesn't push our bees to extinction, which doesn't make our soils desertified. And this new book I was showing you upstairs, Deepak, is basic. In India, it's called Annam, the links between biodiversity of the earth and biodiversity in our gut. In Ayurveda, as you know, this is called Agni. Yeah. And it was known that every disease begins in the gut. In modern science, they're only finding it out in the last decade, the gut microbiome, which is exactly as you said. We are a tiny part of ourselves, which should be a big reason for humility. We are a minority within ourselves.
We are the awakening of bacterial consciousness.
Exactly. And for those who think being a foreigner is a dismal thing, well, you're a foreigner in your body, because we are being held by all this bacteria. Now, I think 2 things have fascinated me. So one, we just did the work on seeds and diversity, and now it's coming out that the more biodiverse your diet, the healthier your gut microbiome is. Because they need food, and it's such a sensitive system. It's being called the second brain, the enteronervous system. More neurological activity is going on in the interaction between our food and our gut, which becomes our body and our brain, than we even know. But the final thing is, we measure growth in GDP. They're now finding the so-called primitive tribes have the much healthier gut. So the richest gut is the Maasai of Masai Mara. And as you know, there's a whole new problem with the desertification of the gut. There's a desertification of the heart, the desertification of the mind, there's a desertification of the gut, and there's a desertification of the earth. And with the desertified gut, what are they doing? The fecal transplant, shit transplant, getting it from healthy people. Is that what we have to reduce ourselves to, rather than just eat good food?
So I have to admit that I was trained in the reductionist paradigm. It wasn't until much later that I shifted, because my patients would come and say to me, I changed my diet, it became more plant-based, it was diverse, there was maximum diversity in plant-based foods, and my asthma went away, or my hypertension went away, or my cardiovascular disease went away, or my rheumatoid arthritis went away, or my cancer went into remission. Honestly speaking, I didn't believe my patients, even though they told me all this, because I had no way to explain it. How does changing your diet cause remission in disease? Till I actually realized that these seeds, that are actually the offspring of the light of the sun, which is the basis of all life on our planet, that these seeds are actually the anti-inflammatory metabolites are coming from them and neutralizing everything that's happening that builds up with all the toxicity of the environment, but even toxic relationships and toxic emotions. Ultimately, hostility and anger and violent emotions and inflammation is all one thing. It's disconnect from our source. Separation from Mother Earth. I want to ask you 2 things right now. One is, I've seen you now for 30 years or more, relentlessly working for healing the earth and healing ourselves. So tell me some of the challenges you've had and some of the victories, and where do you see us going from now? Because there's it's almost like a war of the world views in the world at the moment, and one side of this, we are at a crossroads. One road spells extinction, because climate change, climate refugees, epidemics, new diseases, inflammation in the body, inflammation in the earth, inflammation in society, inflammation in the war and pharmaceutical industries, we are headed to extinction. And if you don't believe that, if anyone doesn't believe that, then they're in total denial. But there is a way out right now, and a lot of the things we're talking about are reversible. So talk to me a little bit, and a lot of people are watching us on live stream across the world. I think they need to get this information from you. We are in ICU right now, intensive care unit, right?
And the earth has also been put
humanity
in ICU.
is on a ventilator.
Yeah. My work, and I have a new book out called Who Really Feeds the World. It was done for the Expo in Milan, which was dedicated to food and feeding the world. And when I put all the information together, including what we've done, I realized that 75% of the planetary destruction is coming from the industrial system of producing food, which is really a commodity, it's not food, because it's causing all the harm, and food should be annam sharva aushadhi, the food that is the cure for all. Rather, it's becoming the reason for all disease. 75% of the chronic diseases, as you know better than me, are
actually
food
might be
related.
95, maybe 95
Nine.
according to recent estimates.
Now, the chemical industry, like I always say, I call them the poison cartel. And they are a cartel of three now. Bayer has merged with Monsanto, Syngenta has merged with ChemChina, and Dow has merged with DuPont. And the expertise is killing and making poisons. They hijacked our very knowledge of growing food and what food should be, which is why we have this emergency, both the planetary emergency, our health emergency, and social emergencies. All the conflicts are related to how food has destroyed our base, whether it be Syria or whether it be Boko Haram and Lake Chad. My first study on agriculture was because my beloved Punjab, where I did my MSc honors in physics, was blowing up in violence. And I did the book called The Violence of the Green Revolution. So the IPCC, which is the climate committee, in the Intergovernmental Committee, it has said we have 12 years to make a change. The Biodiversity Convention has said 10 years. We are in the middle of a sixth mass extinction. But in 10 years, we can make a change. Now, in the work we've done, my work was mainly just serve the earth fiercely. Hug with a deep, deep love, but resist the hate and the violence with all the energy that you can bring. What we found is in the little seed is the solution to climate change by doing the right kind of farming. All of the solutions to the chronic disease epidemic. To water, our water on the farm. We have a teaching and research farm, and we do a 1-month course. It's called the A to Z of biodiversity, agroecology, and organic food systems. How with the little seed, you can rejuvenate the soil. Our soils have 100% more organic matter than when we started. Nitrogen, 100% more. Zinc, magnesium, all the deficiencies of food. You give back to the earth with gratitude. That's all organic farming is, gratitude. Thank you, earth. Here's a part of your share. She gives the rest. So that abundance that we learn from the seed, the soil teaches us the same abundance. And these are unconditional givings. They're not saying, pay me a rent, intellectual property right, royalty. They say, here, take as much as you want and share it brilliantly. So on every issue, we are finding that in the seed are the solutions of all the major problems we are seeking. And yes, if we keep going on the path that has brought us here, extinction is 100 years at the best, at outermost limit.
Yes.
And when we were talking upstairs, Deepak, you said you don't, the human species you've written off. But you and I believe in potential. And we don't believe in the mechanistic, essentialized quality of stupid, dumb, mechanistic minds. We know we have the potential to be as intelligent as the plant.
Your adversaries are very powerful conglomerates, supported by huge governments, supported by the medical industrial complex, supported by pharmaceutical companies, supported by the what purveyors of mechanistic death, literally. You're fighting Rakshasas, but of course Durga wins. Where are you right now in this whole movement in the world? I see a lot of attacks on you, personal attacks on you. I see a lot of media which is bought against you. How are you managing, and where are you? I mean, I see that there are a lot.
I'm here with you, Deepak.
You are with
right
me,
here,
but
I'm here
but
at
you
ABC
know
with
you're
you.
getting a lot of support also. So talk to us about how we can help you actually galvanize this, so we don't take this road to extinction.
I don't think extinction is inevitable, and I think it's irresponsible to assume it is inevitable. That's why I never went with Dawkins. Hawking.
Dawkins.
No, Dawkins. Dawkins is the gene guy.
No, Richard Dawkins is the guy you're
but
thinking
even Elon Musk, who says, we're going to go extinct, that's why we have to escape to Mars. No, there's no escape from our Earth being and from our Earth citizenship. This is where we have to turn things around. And just two things on, yes, they're powerful, but the pharmaceutical industry and the biotech industry and the chemical industry are not separate industries. They're the same buyers.
They're same, yeah.
And now they're merging with the information technology industry and the financial technology industry. That's why my new book, this is not out in this country yet. It will be out soon, but it's called Oneness versus the 1%. And it's about this new convergences and new mergers, where they want a totalitarian system controlling our minds, our food, farming without farmers, Monsanto owning climate data, soil data, joining up with John Deere to have spyware in the tractors, to then sell us data. So first they said, synthetic fertilizer, without it you'll starve. Then they said GMOs, without it you'll starve. Now they're saying, without our big data and without our artificial intelligence, you're going to starve. No, we won't starve because the earth is generous. And she creates abundance, and all we have to do is be aligned with her, be aligned with the universe. That's spirituality. We have to make food and farming a spiritual act rather than an industrial act of genocide against people. We've lost 300,000 farmers to suicide. America, too, has an epidemic of farm suicides. More than 85% of the suicides are in the cotton area in India. The cotton area was taken over by Monsanto with BT cotton, a GMO cotton. We have an antitrust case saying this is a prima facie monopoly. I worked with my government and parliament to write laws that we don't invent the plant, the animal, and the seed. So our laws have an Article 3J, which says plant, animals, and seeds can't be patentable. Monsanto tried to challenge this law. They lost in the Supreme Court, but talk about power on the media. The next day, they put a fraud news all over the world, from Reuters to everybody in New York Times, that they won a patent on BT cotton seed. No, they lost the challenge to the law that prohibits them from having the patent. 80,000% is the increase in seed price that they pushed. 5 rupee seed, they made it 4,000 rupee. So when the suicide started, my philosophy in life is, problems are big, you begin with the small. You do with your little effort what you can. So I've been saving seeds to deal with the intellectual property empire and the GMO empire. I call it bioimperialism, an empire over life itself, where they want to live off rents from life's generosity. How pathetic can that be? I mean, how miserable, what an impoverished mind to have to live off the earth's renewability and generosity. So when I found the suicide, I went to the cotton belt. We started saving cotton seeds. We started community seed banks. We helped farmers go organic. And in the villages where we are working, Deepak, BT cotton is down 60%. So I'm just going to hang in there another 5 years and we're going to drive it all out. They are powerful, but they lie. And I don't think lies are more powerful than truth.
Satyamev Jayate.
Satyamev Jayate. So I want to tell you, so now what we do is, because it's 150 years of Gandhi's birth anniversary, and Gandhi was dedicated to non-violence in every way. So we work with the ashrams he created, because you remember he made the spinning wheel, the symbol, an instrument of India's freedom against the empire of cotton at that time. So we got inspired by the spinning wheel to start saving seeds, and I started Navdanya as the spinning wheel of today. We now with the ashrams do this hand-spun, hand-woven, hand-printed, vegetable-dyed fabrics. And I've brought a few, and Paulette, I hope with you together, we will make this a way of supporting a 0% GMO. What I want us to do together is work on a world that is 100% organic, 100% biodiverse in our gut and outside, that we have a poison-free food and farming around the world, beginning with a cafe like this, our communities in India, community by community, farm by farm, plate by plate, till by 2050, we say bye to extinction.
So, a couple of things come to mind. You know, as Paulette, as Vandana was speaking, and she says this is a spiritual quest that we are on. And one of the problems I've always had is with the very word environment. It's alienating. There's me and then there's the environment. And this is not the way our shastras work, right? The environment is our extended body. The air is our breath. The sun is the source of life. The earth is recycling as our physical body. The rivers and the oceans and even the puddles are our circulation. And the trees are our lungs. So we have a personal body, we have a universal body, and they're both equally ours. And unless we have this emotional, spiritual shift, then the war will continue. What we need is a critical mass that can see reality as it is, that you as a biological organism are not separate from so-called environment. In fact, you are a product of that. You are an activity of that. Have you ever watched, you don't live here, but I'm sure everybody here is familiar with watching network TV and watching every 10 minutes there's a commercial break, and it's usually a pharmaceutical that's being promoted.
And the footnote saying could be dangerous.
No, the footnote, the first sentence is ask your doctor to prescribe this. You have a happy couple dancing in the background with beautiful music, and then it starts. You could get sexual impotence, and you could die, and everything in between. But ask your doctor to give you a prescription, and people go ahead and do it anyway. So this is the amount of denial we are in at the moment. Anything that is processed, manufactured, refined, has chemicals, antibiotics, petroleum products, basically they're petroleum products.
They're all fossil fuel derived.
All fossil fuel derived.
And the packaging outside and the rot inside.
Yeah, and we don't talk about food being the biggest culprit in climate change.
Yes.
And we don't talk about the fact that it's reversible. You know, how many times have you heard anyone say that this is reversible? Food is the problem, and we can reverse it just by bringing these seeds back to life. In every seed, the promise of thousands of forests, and with those forests, the promise of life for the entire interdependent co-arising of sentient beings.
Absolutely.
And unless we have that spiritual shift, I think it's going to be a losing war. So since we are on the media right now, I think our battle, or shall we say non-battle, our quest for spiritual transformation.
Adharma Yudh.
Adharma Yudh. So anybody understand that? Yug means epic battle. Adharma means in the interest of our common dharma, which is to align ourselves with the elements and forces of the universe. When you do that, you are victorious, and you will be victorious irrespective of all the special interest groups. But since we are online right now, many people are watching us, I would ask everyone to actually participate in this movement through social media, through education, through entertainment, through music, through poetry. And unless we make
visit the website of navdanya.org.
Please visit navdanya.org. Navdanya 9 seeds.
And you know, Deepak, every case we fought against Monsanto, they've lost.
They've lost.
They patented the old Indian wheat variety for not causing gluten allergy. We fought them, they had to give up the patent. And they haven't won a patent on seed in India yet. They lie their way, but they have not.
This story, this ongoing story, Vandana and the big conglomerates, is the modern mythical story of David and Goliath. And we know who's going to win. Durga has to win because she's known for the destruction of ignorance. So we have a little time. You want to say a few words? Anything more you want?
All I'd say is for the very few of these stoles I brought, they're with Amy. And if you want to make a contribution to go back to spreading the seeds of love and the seeds of abundance, we'd very well welcome it. And for those of you who'd like to have a little more information, I have a few more of those flyers, and I can share them with you later.
Yes, do support this effort, because if it wasn't for Vandana, we wouldn't be having this conversation. 35 years she's been relentlessly pursuing the healing of our planet.
50 years.
50 years. I've known
Only
you
the Monsanto bit is 35 years.
I've known you for 35 years. Well, thank you, Vandana.
Thank you.
You're one of my heroes, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deepak.
We have about 10 minutes for questions, and so this is a great opportunity for all of you to say if anything's on your mind, you have a burning question, please pick up my microphone. Oh, you have a microphone? Yes, so Tiana has a microphone. I'm sure there are questions. Come on up.
Thank you. Going back to the diet you mentioned earlier, plant-based diet, I wanted to know if you suggest plant-based diet or variety in diet, which will include animal-based products as well.
I would say maximum diversity of plant-based diet. If you're going to eat animal food, then make sure it doesn't come from a factory. But you can say something more.
I totally support, because I think there are communities where it's so arid that animals is all they can have. Up in the Tibetan plateau, all you can have is a yak. In the Sahara Desert, all you can have is a camel. And it would be wrong and violent to rob those communities of their food options.
Also, food is cultural. So, if you've grown up with a certain kind of food, whether it's a meat-based food or a plant-based food, it's difficult to change. People get stressed. Just make sure that the food you eat is not coming from a factory. That's it.
And doesn't have poisons and is not heavily processed. It can be artisanally processed. By the way, look out for a terribly flawed report that's come out. And today it was at the UN with some film star. It's called the Eat Forum, supported by a coalition of all the poison makers called Fresh. They call themselves Fresh now. The more rotten they make food, they call themselves Fresh. And it includes the Pepsis and the Nestle's, it includes the fertilizer industry, it includes the buyers who are now the Monsantos, the Cargills, who spread bad food around the world with $1 billion subsidy daily is what they take from our public money. And this report is saying, they're using the term plant-based, but then they're talking about synthetic meat in the lab, synthetic milk, hyper-processed food, and one diet for all coming from factories. It's the opposite of what we need to do. We need the Earth's diversity to be the base of our diverse diets.
Hello. Thank you for this work. It really means a lot. Oh, sorry. Thank you for what you've been doing. It really makes a difference to see other people doing this work. My question is really about connection and how so many of these issues relate back to how we've lost relationship to the planet. And I'm curious about ways that you see solutions to helping people remember and reconnect with the planet in a way that's really wholesome.
Well, one, of course, from a scientific point of view, it's very clear that if your food is not coming from the earth and is not coming directly from the earth to your body, it goes through a factory where it's refined, processed, manufactured, contaminated with poison. The data is clear now. And it affects 95% of us. So that is a very important thing. But then, in great cultures, ancient cultures, where there was a deep connection to nature, they had rituals. And you mentioned some of the rituals that we do, and these rituals that go with the seasons. Ritual is a very important way of, in a way, trapping your energy and channeling it in the right direction. And even sometimes when good-minded people, they take meditation out of context, they take everything that we know about the actual science and turn it around in a very ritualistic way into a, what's the word I'm looking for, a very septic kind of zeitgeist. Mm-hmm. What do you say? She's asking a very important question. How do you reestablish this relationship with each other and with nature?
So first is, we could never really be truly separate because we'd be very dead, since we are part of nature. It's only in our mind we had created these walls. So those who think the first time a wall is being built by President Trump, there are many walls that have been built. Many, many walls. And we need to overcome them. For everyone, it's accessible to do something to recognize you're part of the earth. The pranayam is a remembrance that we are part of the breath of the earth. The breathing in and breathing out. The reason I've started the farm in Dehradun, and we call the teaching there, the learning center, learning from the earth, we call it the Earth University. It's a place we welcome anyone. And there are people traveling from around the world to realize that there is joy in simplicity, there is dignity in working and serving the earth. I think if we could reclaim the dignity of our hands to be one with the earth through gardening, through farming, we'll save the planet. We will avoid the catastrophe they're predicting of 99% people being useless because of artificial intelligence. That was Mark Zuckerberg told Harvard University graduates. 99% useless with artificial intelligence. No, the earth is asking for all our hands, all of the 9 billion hands to serve. And every time they make us panic about food, I said, the 9 billion mouths, but they're twice the amount of hands. And if we can mobilize, and that's why the discussion, I really respect the discussion in this country on the Green New Deal. Because that's where our creativity and imagination would work. And how elections go, we don't know, but we can begin with our community. We can begin with our neighborhood. We can begin with our state.
See, the main thing is to have this conversation. This conversation should not be a regional conversation. It should be a global conversation. If enough of us are talking about this, if enough of us are aware of this, if enough of us are engaged with passion and love in action, reach a critical mass, I think that will transform the world, notwithstanding who the adversaries are. And by the way, she is not afraid of anyone. I mean, she's not politically correct at all. And this conversation is going to create a lot of new conversations too. But the facts are on her side, and the spirituality is on her side as well. So expand this conversation. Everybody is watching us talk about this and spread the word. Because social justice, economic justice, sustainability, climate change, and peace are inseparable. They're inseparable. If you want a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, begin with a seed.
I just wanted to ask.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask what your daily mantra is to keep a centered balance around your ideal goals in a world that's constantly trying to manipulate you and push you in different directions.
Replace every personal desire that you have with a vision for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, and joyful world. Period. If somebody puts a gun in my head in the middle of the night and say, "What do you want to see?" I say those words: more peaceful, just, sustainable, joyful, and healthier world. And I said it's all interconnected. We live in a world of interdependent co-arising, and we are sentient beings, and we must know. By the way, that's another question I have to ask you before we finish. Is there something wrong with being human? I mean, I don't see any other species doing this. Are we an anomaly?
We are an anomaly when we became anthropocentric. We are an anomaly when we separated ourselves from other beings. We forgot we are animals. And look at the effort the animal rights people have to make. Let's begin with human rights too. We are animal. We are an extension of our gut. We are an extension of the soil and the sun and everything. So the particular Homo sapiens that has been created in the industrial age, the colonizing age, the age of capitalist patriarchy, the age of racism, it all was a bundle that came together. That has created a particular kind of human being who is a total anomaly on this planet. They don't belong to this earth. And if they go extinct, it's fine. But we all, the normal human beings, I mean, that little child who's being born, can't say you're an anomaly. They have a potential to be part of the earth family, I call it. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Does anyone know what that means?
Vasundhara is the goddess of the earth. I mean, in India, we realize there's so much plurality. We don't have one name for anything. We have 1,000 names. We have 1,000 names for the
Shiva,
for the sacred goddess.
Mm-hmm.
One of her names is the sacred earth, Vasundhara. Kutumbakam is the family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the family of the earth, which is the one humanity interconnected in our diversity on one planet, interconnected in that diversity. So each time they become more fascist, I say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We are one earth family. You can't break our relationships.
That's the mantra, my friend. Vasudev Kutumbakam. The earth is my family. The world is my family. We are all one family.
And Deepak, I want to just say, we did a big biodiversity congress. It was a scientific congress. I gave this the theme. And initially all the scientists were edgy. We can't use something like that. I said, so are you saying we're all separate? No, of course we're interconnected. I just said, say it. There were some schools present. I've just been invited by 200 leading schools of India to create programs for education, for being part of the earth family.
That's what will create the critical mass. The schools, you look at this room, it's all young,
Beautiful and
young visionaries for the future.
Some of you,
You are the caretakers for the future. We messed it up for you, but you're going to save the earth. And poetry and music and ritual and this deep love in action. You know, we say love without action is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And action without love is meaningless. But when you put them together, love and action, you create miracles.
Absolutely.
So, Vandana Shiva, Goddess, Durga, and Saraswati, and the abundance of the earth, Lakshmi as well. Thank
And
you.
we all are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you.